T1, the former world champions, just lost to CFO, and the question everyone is asking is how. People might think it was a bad game, but I think otherwise. I'm here to show you that CFO outplayed them from a draft and strategic aspect, and what T1 needs to learn to defend their title. By the way, I'm Deos, former LCS coach, and I most recently won 2 titles with LG in NA Tier 2. If you like the content, please like, subscribe, and join my Q&A Discord if you're interested in getting coaching. Alright, let's get started. For a moment's glance, a common viewer might leave the draft feeling like T1 came out on top. They have a solid front-to-back teamfight with winning lane matchups. This is exactly what T1 is known for. Their dominating early game style where they utilize their prior lead to get an early game lead. But the question that I have is this really the current world's meta? So once we get into the draft itself, the bans are looking pretty standard. Bard is obviously for Keria. They also have a Jarvan and Wukong ban, pretty standard AD junglers. T1 banned Yunara. They also banned 2 mid laners in the form of Orianna and Azir. From here, CFO start off with a Ryze first pick. I think this Ryze first pick makes a lot of sense. It denies it from Faker while also securing the best priority mid, considering the mid lane bans. T1 do a Caitlyn and Vi. Now this is interesting because it showcases that they're leading into that lane dominating style with the Caitlyn. It's been seeing a lot of play recently from the Korean teams. CFO respond with Qiyana. I actually might do another video on this champion later because I think that Qiyana is criminally underused at the moment. This champion is incredibly strong and it's a lot better than the Jarvan that's currently 0-7. And they also pick Sion here. Now, the Sion is the beginning of Doom for T1. Currently, the meta is centered around objectives, and Kate, for example, is being valued for her objective control with the traps and her strong laning. However, the problem with Caitlyn is that she also has a weak mid-game, meaning that she'll struggle with killing a champion like Sion. T1 locks in Nico on 3. This is pretty standard, and then we start getting into the 4 or 5 bans. CFO, they ban out Talia and Abessa. Obviously, these are Vi pairings. T1 ban Karma and Leona to protect the Nico, and then they aim to look to pick Rek'Sai on 4. At this moment, when they lock in Rek'Sai, I would say that the draft is pretty GG for T1. CFO respond with Draven and Alistar, and then T1's final pick is Cassio. Now, you might be wondering, why is it GG? The problem with T1's draft is that a lot of the draft power is utilized on getting these winning matchups that they aren't actually going to be able to utilize because of what CFO is about to do next. So, let's go into the next point, the lane swap. So, there's a lot of nuance to lane swap, and I'll probably make another video for that in the future. However, just for this video, let's really just focus on the basics. Draven wins 1v1 very hard versus the Rek'Sai. Sion is one of the best lane swap champions in general because of his passive, his tankiness. It's just hard to adapt this champion. Now, the purpose of the lane swap is to get better matchups because obviously Draven, Alistar versus Caitlyn Nico is going to be hard, but it's also used to gain and control the tempo of the game. So I'll get into that in a bit. Going into this, CFO's plan starts with a really great latent bait with Qiyana and Draven. The purpose of this is that 1, it gives them information about Vi, but 2, it also delays Vi's clear while also isolating the top lane matchup. And the reason why isolating this top lane matchup is very good is because as we just continue to watch what goes on in the top lane, it's very brutal. For Rek'Sai to be able to play in this specific matchup, he needs to have some form of jungle threat, which he can no longer attain because of the split map. And as we can watch it play out, just look at this, constantly hammering him. We're going to get to this viral moment where Doggo is able to actually pick up the solo kill. And realistically, what is Doran supposed to do in this situation? In lane swaps, you can't just base and use your TP, because if he does, they're going to maintain down tempo for essentially the entire game. And here we can look at Vi's positioning, not really in a position to actually help, which results in the solo kill. Now, if you look at the other half of the map, it's pretty standard. You might be thinking, didn't the lane swap changes affect how lane swaps work? But not really. The reason being is that all they have to do is just be top lane at 4 minutes now instead of 3. So we could just look at what Kybing does. Typically, a supports will base them when they get level 2. But in this case, he stays a bit longer, makes sure to get information, and then he's having a perfectly fine time. Just messing around with the Vi, and then getting some extra experience on mid, securing the top crab, and then finally ending up in the top lane. Now, if you're a T1 fan, you might be thinking, okay, this is chill. Rek'Sai has more CS than the Sion. Draven isn't really that much farther ahead than the Caitlyn, right? The Caitlyn still has a small CS lead. But the answer is that there's more. At the 420 wave, this is where the tempo advantage from the lane swap comes in. They crash, Sion bases, goes top, he gets to come back to the wave that's bouncing into them, and then Draven and Alistar get to come back to a wave that's bouncing out. Now, why does the bouncing out matter? The bouncing out matters is because now they can slow push and then play for this dragon. You'll always notice here that a Junjia timed his jungle clear to be there at the same time, whereas bot lane is. So jungler is always on the ADC side, and then Sion is now able to create a small individual advantage with this freeze because the wave is building in. So obviously, this is pretty good for them. Now, as we continue watching, they use this slow push, they get dragon, and then they base again. Now, the important thing here to note is that to them, the creeps don't really matter. It's all about the tempo, like we were talking about. Let's see what happens. They run top, Sion catches his one wave, TP's bottom. Now, the beauty of this TP is that even though Yumiyushi is actually top lane first, the beauty is that Sion TP's bottom, gains tempo, Thorn matches, and now he actually has the move here to affect the Grubs play. And if you watch what actually helps those Grubs, they started, right? Driver shows presence on mid, he actually stays, and then they get this really big fight. Which turns out very much in their favor. Now, why does this matter? Beautiful play. The reason why this matters is because, like I mentioned, what is the purpose of T1's comp? The purpose of T1's comp is to utilize their winning lane matchups and then generate the priority and get the early objectives. But with the one decision to lane swap, they not only secured first dragon, they also secured 2 grubs. They would have gone 3, but in getting the 1 grub, trying to go for the steal, they lost 3 people. They also got the sums, and they also were able to dodge a hard lane matchup. If you like this type of content, please like, comment, and subscribe. I'll be doing this daily.